What's up, y'all? She from Legacy Hustle here. I have a little request of you. If you truly appreciate what we're trying to do here and you enjoy the show, the sharing, the transparency, and the insights, as well as the inspiration we bring you with each and every episode, I need you to help us out as well by supporting. Go ahead and subscribe, like, comment, follow, and review as we work to get the word out to more people about the show. Also, please consider sharing the show with your entire network. Thank you. Enjoy the show. What's up, y'all? This is Legacy Hustle, a show that's going to highlight and amplify the stories of Black entrepreneurs and their products or services that are impacting the preceding generations, future generations, or just cross-generationally. We use the word legacy not only to describe the solutions created, but also to acknowledge the guest's impact on their own family and personal circles through wealth generation or creation. The show is going to explore what their business is, how they got it off the ground, and the trials and tribulations experienced on their legacy hustle journey, in an effort to both inspire and educate you, our listener, who I'll refer to along the way as legacy hustlers. I'm Shied, I'll be your host, and in this episode, we're going to be talking to Phil Terrill of SoleSafe. Phil is the founder and chief executive officer. He's a dynamic and engaging individual who's never shied away from a challenge, met a stranger, and is always down for discussions on how to make the world a better place for others. Prior to SoleSafe, Phil has worked at Microsoft, the Burks companies, and MillerCoors. He resides in St. Paul, Minnesota with his wife, Rita. And without further ado, we're just going to go get into it. All right, Phil, thank you so much for being with us today here on Legacy Hustle to talk about SoleSafe and you yourself as an entrepreneur and legacy hustler. Welcome.
Yeah, appreciate you, Rashid. Man, I'm glad to be here. We've been talking about this for a minute, so I'm excited to chop it up and talk about not just myself, but also what you have going on with Legacy Hustle. So I appreciate you for having me.
Of course, thank you for being here. Let's dive right in. Tell the people what SoleSafe is and where
Yeah,
this idea came from.
yeah. It's funny. 3 weeks ago, I would tell you it's sneaker insurance and leave it at that. But like many, entrepreneurs and business owners, whatever, you naturally pivot, through the process, through the grind. And so now I would tell you SoleSafe's an asset management platform built for sneakerheads by sneakerheads. And it's really this derivative of my own, sort of love and passion for the space. Yes, I have a whole bunch of shoes behind me, but I still have my first,
I missed that.
yeah, it's like obviously like sneakers, but like I still have my first pair of sneakers, like my very first pair of sneakers, an Air Jordan 5 Fire Red, little baby shoe sitting upstairs in my office in a tin can. And so it was like, I think it was the culmination, right? Or at least the beginning of a 31-year journey since birth to do something related or in proximity to sneaker culture. And, that's kind of where we've arrived at today around this whole idea of sneakers as an asset, thinking about a management platform, inclusive of the insurance, and now we're on this bigger journey to go figure it out.
All right. And tell the people how long you've been on this journey, man.
Yeah. So SoleSafe started like as an idea, I think the summer of 2020. And so it's crazy because, at that point we were like in the thick of it in general as like a society in the pandemic. And so I was like, it's weird. It's like I had a kid during the pandemic, in a way. And so that's how it started that summer of 2020. And then it quickly evolved. Like I knew the idea was potentially dope, like just because I knew the space really well. I had actually just got done insuring my wife Rita's ring. And so I was like super curious about insurance right then. And so I started asking questions about, insurance, about the processes, about claims, about valuations, appraisals. And they were, I was like, dang, I'm getting ready to go down the insurance road. And I was like, insurance is not a thing. You're like, yeah, I can't wait to do insurance. It's like, it wasn't that. I just knew the sneaker space so well, and the things that were happening on the technology side of sneakers, on the infrastructure itself and the market. And so it started in 2020 of June, last 2 years ago now, almost 2 years ago. And it's quickly transformed into a lot of other things. So, but that was where it started.
So in the summer of 2020, you got things rolling and really going. Didn't you still have a full-time job at the time?
Yeah, did I? I had a full time. Yeah, I was at Microsoft still, and um I was just hustling, man, like literally hustling. I would do my Microsoft gig. And it's funny, I can say this now because I'm like, I ain't on payroll, right? And so, um, even then, it's like, you kind of naturally, like, and a lot of people have like side gigs and things they do outside of their, sort of primary job. But yeah, I started working on it at Microsoft. And it was weird because the space I was in, right? Like, it wasn't like I was just in like, random role at Microsoft. It was just like I had like a real job like at Microsoft,
Yeah, yeah.
and
You were busy actively doing a lot of different
yeah, doing
things.
a lot of things. And so but I knew though if I didn't, at the same time invest in my side hustle, then I wouldn't have even been at the point I'm at now, right? I would have been behind.
Time out real quick, right? One of the things that I have a pet peeve with is
Is the
referring
dog?
to the development of whatever you're doing as a side thing, right? And so,
Well, it was a
um,
side thing because
but
it wasn't
it's
because
a
it wasn't
legacy
getting
thing.
it wasn't yeah, it was a legacy thing, but like the thing about it is like I had
And you
to.
gonna tell me you were putting in less time than you were into your day job?
No, what my reason for saying is
So
a
was
side.
it really a side thing if you were doing it as much as you were doing a
It
9 to
it
5, if
started off
not
as
more?
that. It started off as like a side thing. It was like, I got this
Yeah,
idea, it's pretty dope. I'm gonna figure it out and start to, and you know this because we talked about it. It was like, yo, I got this idea, and I kept working on it, and then the idea started to evolve, right? And I was like,
right.
I can see the legs getting stronger, right? And now it's like, instead of like, that adage of like crawl, walk, run, it was like crawling went to walking really fast. And then like I was like, oh man, like I started doing like accelerators and we could get into all that stuff, right? Which is, I saw the pieces coming together of that puzzle a lot faster than even I anticipated. And so the side hustle did start turning into like the true legacy hustle, because I started to see the bigger picture of what I was working on. And
Yeah.
then
And
I
I'm just
started to
gonna come
move.
back and say this, legacy hustlers, while Phil is taking us on his journey, I'm still adamant that even though this brother's calling it a side thing, he was pouring just as much time, love, energy, if not more, into figuring out what he was passionate about and taking that off of the ground, so that he could walk away from his job. And so to me, again, I
Yeah,
say this
yeah,
all the
yeah.
time, it was a legacy hustle. It wasn't a side hustle,
I
and it
dig it.
evolved to the point where he was able to walk away from his job. So let's talk about that a little bit too, right? For those of you that don't really know me like that, I actually work as an HR professional for my day job. And so Phil and I ended up having a conversation about like, yo, when is the right time for me to
Yeah.
like, call it quits? And so in all of my HR expertise and wisdom, I laid something out for him. And then this brother was like, nah, I'm leaving now.
Yeah.
So what went through your head? What was that point where
Yeah.
you finally decided, yo, this is it. This is me pulling the ripcord and jumping out of corporate America to fully pursue my legacy hustle?
Yeah, and it's funny, I'm laughing about that now because there were some like really like serious conversations we had, and it was like super strategic. It wasn't, and there were a lot of things, like a lot of moving parts for me, because I spent a lot of time when I was at Microsoft intentionally building a lot of equity with people around my brand, my personal brand, professional brand. And so I was really sensitive to making a move. I was really just really sensitive. I had, as like different relationships at different altitudes of the company, from the top to the bottom. And so I was just being really thoughtful about it. And it was causing like this, not for anyone listening, like it's harder than it seems, right? Like if somebody outside looking in and you see somebody leave their job, it's like, oh, that's dope. But it's like, yeah, but the part that Rashid and I are talking about is like the way you do it is so important. And so like I knew it was time when two things, like I knew it was time when because the big thing I was like, I have to get into something that funds the company, right? And I was like, will there be funds for me to actually pursue this full time? even for a short period where I didn't have to rely specifically on my own funds, right? Which bootstrapping was a part of my strategy anyway, which I was doing while at Microsoft. And then so that started to materialize. I was like, okay, it's all about timing. And so when I got into Techstars, which we can get into Techstars later, but it was like when I got into Techstars, which is like probably like one of the top 2 accelerators for startups in the world, I knew it was over. Now the question became, how soon do I leave? Right? Because that's what we were talking about. And I was like, well, I'm ready to go now then. Because like the thoughts of leaving when you start to have them, and like when you start to have them at first, you're like, like the legacy hustle, you don't necessarily know when it comes. But when it comes, it's kind of surprising. It's like it catches you off guard because now you have to really think through stuff. And for me, I wasn't thinking about just me. I had just got married. Like I was like, there were a lot of moving parts. And so I was like, I had just got my Microsoft check, like my bonus. I was like, so people that know Microsoft, you're like, okay, first of all, you gotta wait till July 1st to do anything. And then right? I'm just giving y'all some free game if you have Microsoft, you think about it. Right. But and then then the big payday comes September 15th. Right. And so between like May and that time, you're operating like, yo, I want to make sure they allocate my bonus the right way and that, la la la. And so that's kind of what I was thinking about, the relationships and things. And then when I got into Techstars, I knew it was over. So then like the thing we were talking about is, do I stay until November 7th? Like, and get all of the money, right? And all the benefits and make sure those things were tight, or do I, because I actually had a time bound situation anyway. So it wasn't like I had until like the end of December, I didn't have that sort of set up.
Yeah.
As part of my entry into Techstars or acceptance into Techstars. And then I just knew like I needed some time too, right? Like after you go kind of hard like that at a company like Microsoft, a lot of people forget the part to take the time out for themselves. And so that also is what kind of triggered me to just be like, you know what? I'm out. And so I left. My last day at Microsoft was, I put my 2 weeks the first day of October. And my last day at Microsoft was October 15th, 2021. And I took those few weeks kind of off. Cause like then I got really confused, right? I was like, well, what do I do now? like, I was like, well,
So
what do
here
I do?
you are, you walked
I'm
away, and then
messing
you're
up.
like, okay, now what do I start doing for this business full
Yeah.
time?
I was
That's
like,
it.
now what? I got a whole
Yeah.
day to myself, basically. And I was like, I don't even know what to do. I don't have any meetings. Like, there's no monthly business reviews and like all this other stuff. Um, and so I just started running a company, building a company, like really building a company. Because now I could dedicate my day, like when I had prime energy to, work on it. So that's kind of where we were at.
All right,
And
but
then, then I
let
left.
me bring us back to the money element. You were highlighting, right? So where did you get the funding for this, right? A lot of times when our listeners
Yeah.
are tuning in, they want to understand, all right, how they get it off the ground. So you spoke about bootstrapping, and then talk about like, the elements of being able to find additional funding for your business.
Yeah, the nice part. So at first, like I was going into it like true hustler mode, right? I'm like, hey, I'm gonna make sure I have, and that was kind of like the thing with Microsoft and the timing of it all. Is like I wanted to make sure I could get the last bit of check I could, but then also, people don't think about like healthcare and all these things, right? That
The
sort of change
benefits.
how you actually think about money, and that's something else we were talking about. And if you work at a company like Microsoft before you go full time in a startup, it's a big difference. Like you go from zero to hundreds of dollars that you pay for insurance, and it's like these little things were some things I was taking into consideration when it came to the money. And so I knew I could bootstrap and kind of self-fund the company. We were already doing it, and I had 3 other co-founders before that were also contributing to the work that was being done specifically on the tech side, which was at that point the main cost. And then I was like, well, we have to get some money somewhere else. Like this is not going to work. I don't want to exhaust all my reserves just for this. And so I had to make a decision. And some people do end up going down, like they're able to bootstrap their company for a long time, but the reality is like that's a very small percentage of people that will ever scale a company with by just bootstrapping. And so I knew like I had to go down a VC route and then also get more creative also in terms of getting funds. And so I applied to grants and things, for businesses that were non-dilutive, meaning not taking equity out the company. that would, help give equity where we could have it.
And
And
then how did you
then
go about finding
so
those?
I
Is
did
there
that.
like a Were there certain websites that you went to that had some of those listed?
Yeah, so a couple of the good ones that I checked out, there's one in particular called Hello Alice, helloalice.com. That's a great one. Some people, recommend going to like the Minority Business Development Council, depending on like your company. There's all kinds of, sort of places. Even if you just like literally, I was typing in, for me at least, depends on the company, the structure of the founders, and their backgrounds. But for me, obviously like I was a black male starting a company, a tech company, and so there were grants and things specifically for that. But Hello Alice is a really good source. That's how I found out about the NAACP Black Entrepreneurs Day grant with Damon John that I won. Things like
Wait,
that where
what was
you
that? What did you win?
yeah. So there's a grant with the NAACP. It's called Black Entrepreneurs Day, and it's really curated by Damon John from Shark Tank, and the first one was last year, and he had 10 companies that they give $25,000 grants to. Plus, you get to engage with the corporate partners there's like 10 or whatever corporate partners attached to each company. And then this, I applied. I was like, just like anything, like shoot your shot. And I applied to the grant, and so I was selected. And then for me being in insurance, my corporate partner for that one was the General Insurance and American Family Insurance, which is dope. So being able to connect with American Family, I'm getting ready to potentially do something with the General in the coming months, and then being able to connect with like Shaq, like Shaquille O'Neal, just like all these things and components are dope. And so Hello Alice was one of those places where I found out about that, and they have some other really good grants.
So you stumbled on Hello Alice, you started applying to stuff, and next
Just
thing you know, you're connecting with all these different high
these
level
different people.
celebrities and business people and getting these connections that you didn't have access to before through it. So
Yeah,
if you get nothing else from what Phil is talking about right now, just start applying to stuff, look online, use resources like Hello Alice to see what's out there for you.
yeah.
When you think about where you're at on your journey so far, can you share what you think has been your biggest challenge that you've had to overcome up to this point in time?
Yeah, I think there's a couple. The biggest one for me is like, I felt like I built a really good brand at Microsoft, and it was hard for me to detach from that, right? From Phil Microsoft guy. And so that was one thing. And then naturally, like people say this, like, oh, it's you have more free time, so it's easy to just get stuff done. But it's like I had to learn how to like, in corporate, you kind of learn how to prioritize, right? But based on deliverables and things that make the most impact, right? But when you're running a company, there's things like I'm building a company. You have to ruthlessly prioritize a lot of stuff, right? Like, and so I had to learn to tell myself what are the 2 to 3 things that I have to do today, right? Of the millions of things, like like what are the 2 to 3 things that if I don't do them today, I basically create a log jam for
Bottleneck.
tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So now I've messed up, right? um Learning how to do that and to say no to people, because like in the entrepreneurial world you want to connect with everybody, you want to do everything, and you want everybody to know your business and this and that. And I had to learn how to be like in the shadows, like, and just work, and just get stuff done. And so that was like the second thing. And then the other one is like imposter syndrome. Like a lot of probably founders might say that, but it's I had to really get that out my head. Like I stopped saying like, other people go like, you're the CEO, you need to think like the CEO. I'm like, yeah, I get it. Like I know CEOs. Like I get it. It's glamorous to say you're the CEO. Like it sounds good. Like I'm the CEO. But it was like I wanted to make sure I was the founder first, right? Versus the CEO. And so I had to first separate the two. And people are probably like, what are you talking about? Well, let me break that down. So like as a founder and CEO, because technically I'm both, the founder stuff was more important to me, meaning like, what is this? Like, what are we doing? Why am I doing this? Right? Because at some point I'm gonna have to go from being just, and I had 3 other co-founders. So like I also went through a process where I had to work with them to essentially, it's funny because I joke around now, I'm like, I fired my founders, right? But I'm like, I didn't, I didn't necessarily fire them. It's something that you learn along the way, where you have to think about how you construct a team to actually scale a company, like build the right foundation. And so like that was part of being a founder. So like, like doing the legalities, like, did I even structure the company right? Do I even understand what a cap table is? Like, meaning like equity on an Excel spreadsheet. Do I know how my company ownership is allocated? Do I even understand fundraising rounds? There were certain things where it was like these fundamentals of starting a company. I needed to make sure I had those down before I go out and say I'm the CEO, right? Meaning like I got the strategy, I have the vision, I can hire talented people, I know how to go fundraise. I didn't know any of that shit, right? Like I was like, let me go make sure I'm a great founder, and not even great, like I'm a good founder, I'm a decent founder, like that I had the fundamentals,
Yeah.
and I can't speak for like the entire audience that'll listen to this, but a lot of them are going to look just like me and you. And so the reality of that is like you also have to really learn the space, right? And I'm an observant person. And so like I would go and just kind of observe, and kind of see
And where are
how it's
you going
going.
to observe? Where are you going to
Yeah.
learn to be a founder? Like,
Yeah. So I would
where?
go like to like pitch competitions, or I would go to startup, founder meetups, right? Or they have different like founder classes or startup classes, virtual or in person, whatever people are comfortable with. So I did some of that stuff to just learn, or reach out to other people I knew started companies like that were maybe 2 to 4 steps ahead of me. Like they had already raised capital, right? Or, they had already done some beta testing, or they just finished an accelerator to get them, on the next step. And so then I could learn, right? Just like how people say, like, use other people's money. Sometimes you have to use other people's experience too, right? Money's not the only thing that gives you value. And so I was like, well, let me go get the OPE on, right? Like other people's experience, so I can make sure I'm a good founder, right? Because then
Yeah.
once I had to go get OPM, other people's money, I know what the hell to do with it, right? Right? And so that was like what I mean by like I had to learn how to be a founder first before I could learn how to be a CEO.
And
And
not only
now
were you able to understand how they were fundamentally moving, but then when it came time for you to go get OPM, you were able to articulate why you
articulate
needed the money and how you were going
exactly.
to be using it, right?
Exactly. And so now, even today, like as we started off, when I said, well, SoleSafe has evolved, like I've pivoted, even to now have to go from articulating a company vision and mission direction one way and saying it a whole different way, like 2 weeks later, like you have to learn how to say that in a way that people believe you. Like,
Right.
like, cause I'm actively raising funds, right? And so it's like when you're in the midst of raising funds, and you're talking about pivoting a company that they invested in initially,
Before.
yeah,
Yeah.
before,
Yeah.
you have to be like very convicted in what you're saying. Um, and so like that's just a part of building the muscle around being a good founder, but a good CEO too. And then because you have to say to people too, like you have to answer that question: what are you gonna do with my money? That's the
Facts. And
CEO part.
and
Like,
talk a little bit more about, you highlighted the fact that you were able to get in Techstars. For our listeners who aren't familiar, like, what
yeah,
is
what is that?
Techstars? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's crazy. I'll tell you about Techstars, and I'll tell you about my experience with Techstars because it's a little bit different. So Techstars, I kind of think about it in two ways. So basic level, it's Techstars is essentially a VC fund. It's a venture capital fund. At the end of the day, they invest in companies, high growth companies, that can yield returns for sure. Um, they invest in a lot of different areas. I think they have 18 or 19 exits, meaning like companies have gone public, like IPO'd. So it's
And
really one of those.
it's not just money that they're supplying, right?
No, and that's the beautiful part about it is, so yes, they invest in your company, they get some equity in return, but then on top of that, you have this extensive global network of mentors, of other companies, founders. When you're going through program, you get connected to 9 other companies and likely 20 to 25 other people that are going through the same stuff you are, relatively, right? Um, that you immediately build connections to. You meet investors, you meet potential partners on the biz dev side, business development side. Potential employees are in this sort of experience, and so
So it's an
holistically, you
entire
kind of get it's
ecosystem.
a entire ecosystem to help startups win, like to help you succeed. And it's competitive for sure, but at the end of the day, um, just like with the grants, like if you don't apply, you'll never know.
And I
Um,
want to go back to some of the other things that Phil was saying before. It's important that you take time to go on that learning journey to understand the fundamentals of what your business is, what you're offering, how you're structured, and what you're thinking
yeah,
through, and then testing that story along the way with different individuals. So go to the meetups. It may either be virtual or in person based on how you feel about getting out there, out and about. But really begin to learn from others as much as you're talking about your business, and then hopefully, when you get to the point like Phil, you started summer 2020, and then, fall of 2021 is when he's making these moves into a firm like Techstar. But hopefully, that time frame gives you the ability to really polish your story and apply it to the right places to get that experience to be able to take off with something like a Techstars, right? But don't be scared of just putting yourself out there and beginning to really see what's out there so you can train yourself accordingly, right?
yeah,
When you
yeah. One
think,
of the Go ahead.
go
No, I was
ahead,
gonna
say
say
what you're
like
going to say.
one of the things with Techstars too, at least that I went through which was just for more context for people too, to your point about like not being afraid, right, or not being scared to do it, and get the reps, right, because like at the end of the day, it's about reps, like repetition, and so like we applied to Techstars the year prior, right, and we didn't get into Techstars the year prior. We were way earlier in our development as a company though, so we were super early. And I remember telling my co-founders at the time, I was like, we're not gonna get in. I just want y'all to know. Like, I'm gonna set the right expectations with y'all. We're not gonna get in. The idea might be dope, sure. I was like, but as a team, as a business, as a entirety, we're not gonna get in. Cause like there's too many holes and they're getting ready to, rip those holes wide open. And that's exactly what happened. And is exactly what we needed to happen. So like
I was just about to say that. That's
yeah,
probably
and that's what we
exactly what y'all
needed.
needed.
Yes, what we needed, right? And I learned a valuable lesson that day. We got to the second round, and one of the reviewers told me, basically like, Phil, I asked you some questions about the business, and you kind of knew it. He was like, at the end of the day, the CEO should know everything cold, right? Like you should just be able to spit it all out, like no matter who's there, And so my only like on this part about like shooting your shot, like if I would have never got that kind of feedback, I don't think I would have been able to go back in the lab and take the other feedback, like the more feedback about the company and the model, and make it all work. And at that time, it was just insurance. But then I've applied the mindset of the CEO or the person starting the company. You should be so deep and understand the business so well that it's like like how people can spit out stats on basketball or something like that, like something culturally relevant. Like you should be able to do the same for your company,
For your
um,
business.
no matter what, And so, without thinking about it, and so that's just like a lesson I learned going through the process now a year ago, and then now being in the program a year later. I'm getting like maximum value because I'm super clear and precise on what I'm trying to do. I know the business code, at least code enough, and still have room to grow, of course. But for anybody who has like that type of idea and they think they can scale a company, and not even to say like you got to go have $1 billion company. I think, look, like everybody wants to have $1 billion company. Like, yeah, right. But hell, you can go have a $50 million company, do well, and still have a great, situation, whether that's acquisition, merger, IPO, whatever the heck it is. Right.
Right.
Like it's all good.
At this point in your journey, can you share any sacrifices that you've had to make for your business?
Yeah. I mean, one, I gave up that nice check at Microsoft. But
And so, yeah, he's saying it jokingly, but I think that is one of the biggest barriers for so many individuals that have an interest in beginning their own business, right?
yeah, it's
Like,
serious.
you are hooked up to your
Yeah, man, it's a
corporation
good
because that,
situation.
ooh,
It's a
this check is
yeah,
nice,
yeah, it's
And so
nice.
it's hard to let that go. So thank you for sharing that and being
Yeah.
transparent.
No, I say that. I say jokingly, Microsoft. I'm also serious that because there's like it's not even a check, right? It was some of the other things like healthcare.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned that earlier. Like that's a real thing, and so, um, there's some other like additional benefits that you kind of glaze over that you have. When you leave, you're like, dang, no more stay fit, or like, you know, I'm sorry, if you know that
Yeah.
benefit, it's like free,
Yeah.
basically like free exercise,
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was one, and then like early on, I actually sold sneakers, right? Like to offset some of the costs. Like um, I had some, I didn't sell a lot of them. I sold enough to get some funds that we needed to do certain things.
So
Um,
you took some of your prized possessions, like
yeah, man,
some
I
of the
had,
ones that had a pretty
yeah,
penny attached to the price
yeah.
tag. You
Like I
sold
sold a
all of
pair
them.
of off-white Jordan ones. It was the UNC Jordan ones. Oh man, I had to do
So,
it
so
though.
what you're hearing, right? Like whatever it is that you're trying to establish and build for yourself, in some way, shape, or form, there are going to be sacrifices, and that's okay. You're just gonna have to measure. If I give this up, what am I going to get in return? And so you
Yeah,
hear from Phil how his journey has just continued to evolve in a beautiful way. And I think a big part of that is not only because of his growth mindset and his ability to constantly learn, but also his intentionality in being able to figure out how do I prioritize and what do I need to sacrifice in order to get me to where I need to get to. When you think about the vision for the future, where does SoleSafe go?
yeah. I mean, in some worlds, I have this. It's funny because I'm like, you don't have to have $1 billion company, but now I'm like, you know, I do have not necessarily the aspirations to have $1 billion company.
Go ahead,
I have
brother.
more
Speak
of
it into being.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I have the aspiration that if I build a great company culture with the right people and invest in those people, very similar to how I felt when I was at Microsoft and in other spaces, then the $1 billion company will come, right? And so like the bigger vision is to create a company like truly like that people really love, like that they feel ownership of. We can do some really dope things and disruptive things in the space. Essentially we're evolving from an Insurtech or an insurance technology company into really like a financial tech company, based on some of the other things that we're doing, future state, currently in future state that we have plans to do. And so, for me, it's about how do we create this like culturally relevant financial platform. Today that's for sneakers, but tomorrow is really for any sort of like cultural asset. But um,
I
yeah,
appreciate
there's a
you.
lot to be done, but it's an exciting time, so I'm excited about it.
Appreciate you for sharing. We're going to segue into what I call the 5 minute hustle. It's just
Yeah,
a
yeah.
simple call and response. And we're going to take our listeners on a journey of some of the things that are important to you and have helped you as a business person, right? So, one of the things that I'm going to ask off rip, what initially held you back from becoming an entrepreneur?
Fear. You want me to add some more there?
Yeah. Yeah. Go
Oh
ahead.
yeah. So I think it was fear. You know, I I have a lot of, community and a village around me that's full of entrepreneurs. And I give credit to them. They inspire me on a daily basis. But I was fearful of getting rid of my comfort, right? And I was super comfortable. Um, and I didn't know how hard it would be. I mean, like I did, but like through other people. But like this is hard. Um, you sacrifice even more stuff. Like I think about now, I'm sacrificing a lot of time with my wife, with my friends, with my family, and I'm like, I didn't know it would require that much sacrifice. And so like I think that was the thing is like I kind of knew that it would come, but now that it's here, I'm like, yeah, I wish I would have got into it sooner because then I would have learned faster how to sort of navigate and manage so I can not just be a good founder, a good CEO, but like a better like husband, person, family member,
Yeah.
like all
Be,
that
be
kind of
an
stuff.
all around stand up man.
Yeah, just and being present when it matters, right? Like it's when you're building a company, there's the other side of that fear, which is like failing, right? And so like when I left Microsoft, I was thinking, man, what if this doesn't work? Like, I've taken this leap and put my all into this thing, and naturally like you go into it like, yeah, it's gonna work. Nobody goes into it like, man, this gonna fail, like that's that's not how you go into it. And so the other side of that, which is motivating at the same time to make sure it doesn't, at least you go 1,000%. So if it does, you're like, I did everything I could
You
do.
could have done. And
Um,
this segues us into the next thing. Like, what do you think is the best business advice you've ever received? You dropped a lot of pearls along the way with that last
yeah,
one.
yeah, it's crazy because the best advice that I ever received may not have been just business advice. It's like life advice, and I got it from an old man in Cuba. And I was getting ready to cross the Malecon, and I wasn't paying attention. Um, and dude grabbed me like I was about to cross the street. Cars were coming. He grabbed me, and he was just like, "Wait 60 seconds to live another 60." And I basically have applied that to business, meaning just because it looks good, sounds good in that particular moment, doesn't mean you have to do it, right? Or the decision that you make, you should be thoughtful about the decisions and the things you do in operating a company or being attached to a company, leading a company, partner with people, all of that. So probably that is, wait 60 seconds to live another 60, because any decision you make could kill you, literally, like as a company,
Facts. And for you
or
in that
otherwise.
scenario that you presented, yeah, that was real.
Yeah.
Um, when you think about a periodical, like a business book, magazine, podcast, something that you tune into on a regular basis because you feel like it makes you that much better as a
Yeah.
professional or business person, what is that?
Yeah. The most recently, maybe it's because I'm in Techstars, but it's a book called Venture Deals. Venture Deals is such a phenomenal book, especially for people that want to start companies, because it gives you an idea and a lens and perspective of investors, right? And so, and just the ecosystem, like startup ecosystem, the flow, how to think about, like I was mentioning, the cap table and financing your company, and how investors think about things, their different personas, um, raising funds, hiring people. It's all in there, kind of like a blueprint, and at
Is
least to
this
give you
Venture Deals Be Smarter Than Your Lawyer? Brad Feld and Jason Mendelson.
venture deals. Yep.
Yep. Okay.
And that kind of gives you like a really good grounding. So when you do start talking to, um, investors or whatever accelerators, that you know exactly what you're kind of getting into, right? And it gives you just some good working capital, right, in your head. Um, that's one. And then
Yeah.
the other one, which is maybe it's because I think these dudes are phenomenal. I know them. I've worked with them from a prior life at Microsoft, but like I actually pay really close attention to Earn Your Leisure, and I do that maybe more intentionally now, just because of not just the platform and the content, but I look at it from our perspective of how they've built community, how they've dissected a lot of the financial things in the world and made it really consumable for people. So when we think about like SoleSafe with insurance, insurance is not easy to understand. Most people don't like it. So there's certain things I pay attention to, just more culturally too.
And Earn Your Leisure is another podcast out there. Absolutely phenomenal content. So if you're not familiar, go get yourself familiar with it. They have a
Yeah.
series of different podcasts in their family, EYL.
Yeah.
All right. And then finally, for your own particular business, is there a go-to tool, application, internet resource that you use on a regular basis?
Yeah, it's interesting because like I'm at the intersection of multiple things, right? So, I have my insurance sort of, claims. I have like this little, it's like an inbox. It's funny because I get it like every morning. It's like, insurance updates, like industry updates, and it's like claims management. It's like these things that are like super insurance focused, where unless you're in insurance, I would recommend you not read. Like I wouldn't suggest those things. But I look at things like Business of Fashion, some of those kind of periodicals. I look at what Cohen is putting out on the investment and like on the analyst side. So I'm looking at like a lot of different things. I watch, I pay attention to like regular publications in terms of like on the media side, because I need to see what, like, for example, like an eBay or larger companies are doing in the space. um, it's weird. I follow more things on like Instagram too, on a like bite-sized content perspective, like sneaker news, or something like that, just so I can stay up to date, like Complex or Hype Beast or something like that. And that's more just for me culturally, so I know what
Yeah.
the heck is going on in the sneaker world. Um, and then I also pay attention to weirdly or not weirdly, I pay attention to like adjacent industries to what we're doing. So like I pay attention to what's happening in art, or what's happening with investing in alternative assets like wine, and things like that. And so it just makes sure I have like a complete 360 view of what's going on in the world around the company.
Bet. Appreciate you for taking us on that journey. One of the things that I'll be remiss in not bringing attention to is this book right over my shoulder. Can you tell the audience about this book, and the
Yeah.
journey that you went on, and what it means to you?
Yeah, no, for sure. I appreciate you doing that. So that book there is called Collision Course, 4 F's to transform life's challenges into powerful breakthroughs. And I wrote that book as a result of taking notes on my own journey. So back in it was December 21st of 2014, I got into a car accident, self-inflicted. Like I always let people know, like I caused it essentially from drinking and driving. Um, so I was highly intoxicated, likely as a derivative of other unresolved issues that I'd never, sort of discussed. And then, as a learning, like I went to jail, did the whole thing, community service, um, almost killed friends in the car. Like, there's a lot of things that you sort of can unpack from the book. And at the end of the day, I just knew like I had to go on this sort of journey of, rediscovering myself and really getting to a place where I understood who I was so I can go become who I'm supposed to be. And that's what the book is about essentially. It's how can you take whatever you're kind of going through, compartmentalize it and then break it down, right? In 4 kind of easy steps, which were find, focus, feed, and then facts. Like what are those simple steps you can take to identify something, learn about it, spend time, feed into it or pour into it. Um, then start to think about how can I, identify solutions, and then the facts are like what are the outcomes, the things that that are the results from all that work in those first 3 steps. And that's what it was about. And it's funny because like the last part of the book, like the last chapter, like there's like blank pages almost, and people are like, why the heck did you do that? And it was because that was just one chapter, literally, like technically like more than one, but like one large chapter, um, the decision I made where I wanted to help other people that might be silently going through things. And so I never intended, like I was joking with you about this, like I never wrote that book to be like, yo, let me go win a, Pulitzer Prize or something like that, or be on the New York Times bestseller list. It was about the one-off conversations I had, with little kids who were like, I'm going through this, or I did that too, and or I'm dealing with drinking and something like that. So that's what I did. I took my journaling and wrote a book, and hopefully help other people that were silently dealing with stuff become better people, and kind of achieve the things they wanted to with their lives. So
I appreciate you for being so transparent and your willingness to share that journey, and where the book came from. Check it out. It's on Amazon if you're interested in picking it up. Collision Course 4 F's to transform life's challenges into powerful breakthroughs. Phil, it's
yeah,
been an absolute pleasure and honor to have you on the
appreciate you.
show today. Really enjoyed, everything you shared, from your growth mindset to the sacrifices that you've made to the amazing things that have happened on the journey in terms of your success thus far. We're looking forward to seeing you become $1 billion company in the future.
Hey, I'll take it.
Um,
I'll take it.
so any words that you'd like to leave the people with before you sign out?
Um, yeah, I would. I have this other acronym that I live by. It's sort of like my silent credo, I guess. And it's called EARN, EARN. And EARN is simple. It stands for each accomplishment remembers nothing. And what that really means is like, for example, I had an idea for a company. Maybe that's the accomplishment. But if I don't tell anybody about it, it means nothing, right? But when I tell somebody about it, then it means something. Then it's like, okay, how does it add value, right? So it's like it's a way to consistently and constantly remind yourself, like, keep doing it, like keep going. One block leads to another block, leads to a foundation, which then leads to you being able to put up walls, which then leads to you putting up windows. So then, it's like you now have built a house, which is like, or built a company. And so like each accomplishment remembers nothing, or earn, is what I would leave the other hustlers out there like with. is
I love it.
keep
Appreciate
earning.
that. Thank you, Phil. Really appreciate your time today. What's up, Legacy Hustlers? I hope your cup is overflowing with inspiration, motivation, and knowledge after listening to our guests today. And if it was, don't forget to subscribe, like, follow, comment, and share with your friends so we can continue to grow the base of listeners. Shout outs to Chris from Sideline Records for always producing an amazing episode. Jonathan Leonard, we see you. Thank you for the intro music. And to our listeners, until the next time we connect, please don't get in your own way in the pursuit of your dreams.